think we're in this one.
Okay, welcome again. Hello once again. I hope everyone is doing good. Nice to see your faces again, for those that I can see their faces. We will start with the demos, and who wants to go first? Team Karen or Team Sandra's? Maybe Sandra's, since Mike is not here, to give them a bit more time to catch up.
Okay, so I will start with the demo then. Just give me a second, please.
All right.
I'm just gonna share my screen. Just give me a second. Okay, so where is okay, this one. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Oh, very nice VS Code theme. I like those colors.
Okay, so this is the code. I just need to close this on this meeting. Sorry. Okay, so can you see my screen? I have the database and the GitHub.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So this week I worked with Cassandra. We had to create a feature for the issue number 10. As an item, I want my estimated next purchase date to be computed at the time my purchase is recorded in the database, so the app can learn how often I buy different items. Okay, so in the acceptance criteria for this issue is that we had to, when the user purchases the item, we need to get the date next purchase to be updated in real time in the database here. So I'm just gonna close this window. Yeah. So what I have done for the purpose of this demo, I created a list here with 4 items, and I modify the date created for May 1st because like that way we can see the difference in dates when this updates in real time. So if I check one of these items, for example, this cake, then we can see that the date next purchase is updated for May 15. So I have updated this date to May 1st because we didn't have any more list items. We delete them then because there was so much confusion this morning. So we didn't have more data. So that's why I modified this to be May 1st. So otherwise we wouldn't be able to see the update of the date next purchase, as it will give the same date as the date last purchases. So for this issue, we also modify this date last purchase. It was a file stamp, so we modified it to be a proper JavaScript data. Yeah, I think
I didn't catch that. The date last purchase, how was what before?
Which one, sorry?
The date last purchase. You said something about it.
Yeah, it was, I think it was, we saw the date in milliseconds.
It was like a time stamp, like a
date timestamp. Yes,
so they're using a Firebase function.
Yeah, so we have modified this so we can see the data, the JavaScript date. So that's why I modified this code to be, this database. So I could do they created, I modified it to be the 1st of May, so we can have a look of how the date next purchase is updated in real time. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so this is all for the demo, and I think now Cassandra is gonna walk you through the code. Oh, sorry, I need to share again.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Sandra will share her screen as I explain through her screen. I'm so sorry, I'm not on my laptop over here.
Yeah, she's showing her screen. You want to talk through that?
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so let's get to the dates.js file first. Okay, just as she have explained, this is my voice audible enough.
Yes.
Yeah,
For
loud
me.
and clear.
Okay, just as she have explained, our issue is basically that we should update the date next purchase. It has a date before, but we have to update it. And for us to do that, they gave us a function to work with, the calculate estimate function. And that function takes 3 arguments. Okay, before then, let me walk us through what we did here in line 22 to 25. So we are asked to create another function. What this function does is to calculate the number of days, to calculate number of days, the difference between 2 dates. Okay, so this function, the name is get days between dates, and we passed it to parameters, the first date and the second date. And basically this function helps to get the difference between 2 dates. The math.abs helps to remove negative signs that may result in the calculation. Then the line 24 math.floor helps to take away the decimal, returning an integer or a whole number. So that line 24 also turns it to milliseconds. So we are returning this function is returning the difference between 2 dates in milliseconds. Okay, so let's go to the list item file. Okay, here in the list item file, we imported the function, the get dates between dates function in line 5, and also imported the function they gave us to work with in line 6. The function is calculate estimate function. Then coming down to line, okay, before then in line, in line 11, as I have mentioned, this function needs 3 arguments to work with. So what we basically did is to calculate these 3 arguments, the first one being the date last purchased. So in line 12, we first of all, the date last purchased from the Firebase came as a timestamp. So it came as a JavaScript object. We need to change it to normal JavaScript date. So that's what toDate does, the toDate method. So we changed it to normal JavaScript dates. So that's what line 12 does. Then, in that line 12, we were like, for us to get the value of date last purchase to date, for us not to work with null value or null value, we have to check if there is no date last purchase, right? We should use the date it's created. So date last purchase is the day the day the user checked that item, the day the user bought it. Or if it have not yet been bought, we still have to update and calculate for the user the date of next purchase. So we either use date last purchase or the date it is created. These two, we turn them to a normal date, JavaScript date, using toDate method, storing them in a variable that we named date last purchase to date. That's the first argument we'll work with. Then going down to line 15. Okay, we also changed the date next purchase to JavaScript date, because when a date next purchase is that value that the user chose when the person chose whether soon, not soon, and not so soon. So we have to change it to JavaScript date too, because in the Firebase, it has that timestamp date. That Firebase returns that particular type of date format. So we changed it to JavaScript date using to date. So coming down to line 18, okay, yeah, coming down to line 18, for us to get the value of the previous estimate, that function we created in the date that gets the difference between two dates. So we have to wrap it in that function. That's the date next purchase and then the date last purchase. So that the difference between these two dates gives us the previous estimate. Then how we got, okay, the second argument is the date since last purchase. And how we were able to calculate this one is to wrap it in that same function that returns the difference between dates. And then the dates we are finding the difference, the two dates we are trying to get the difference is the date last purchase, right? The day the user buys that item, and then today. So the difference between the day the user buys it and the difference between the day the user buys it and then the today. Yeah, that's new dates. So that's how we came about the second argument, date since last purchase. Then the last argument we have to pass in that function is sorry, are you still sharing your screen? Okay. Okay. So the last argument there is the purchase counter. It's already there for us that we don't need to calculate it. Purchase counter, the last week tags have already done something around it. So these three arguments, we passed it into calculate estimates in line 31 to 34. So in line 26 to 30, we passed it into next estimate. So that's where we did the actual thing the assignment said we should do, passing it into calculate estimate function. So this calculate estimate function returns a whole number. That's the days. So for us to turn it into JavaScript, we have to turn it into a date that will now render in the Firebase as the updated date next purchase. We have to pass it inside the get feature date function in line 34. So the get feature date function helps to turn that next estimate into a date. So that's what we did. And then in the Firebase, we saved and rendered it in the Firebase file. Okay, in the Firebase file in line 79 and line 86, we just as every other property there is saved and rendered, we added the date next purchase there to get it updated in the Firebase file store. Yeah, that's what we did. Any questions? I don't know if you have any questions.
My part. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Aris.
Thank you, Peter. Just a small comment from me. I don't know if I maybe missed that on the code review, but on list item.jsx on line 14, shouldn't we use the current date there instead of the date created?
The current date, today's date.
Because the date created, if you create the item, if you have created the item like 2 days ago, maybe I'm mistaken, but my first thought is that maybe that needs to be the current date and not the date created.
Okay, but by current date, you mean today's date or
No, it's not the current date, because this handle update function is when you mark the item as bought, right? So the date created could be different than the the current date.
Okay, but if we use only the current date, that's the date last purchase, I think we will not, if the date last purchase is null, that means it will throw an error because it needs another date to work with. Because some of the items we've created earlier, we've now done this implementation, so their value is null. So we have to, you only want to check.
If the value is null, then we should put the current date instead of the date created. That's what I meant.
Should we though? As in, I'm just trying to understand in what scenario would the date last purchase be missing? As in, if the item purchase, yeah.
When you haven't bought the item, well, actually the first time that you buy the item, the date last purchase should be null or null, I think.
So so what I mean is if there is no last purchase, then the value should be null.
Yeah, the value of last purchase in the Firebase would be null.
Yeah, as in either you have done it, which has a date, and if you haven't purchased it before, it should be null. We shouldn't just put a date.
But
it's not
Is it the logic?
It's a little bit confusing. If you see on line 18, when you get the previous estimate, so you need to get the difference, the previous estimate in days. So that's why you need the date last purchase. So you get the first estimation, which I guess the first time you created should be the time that you're going to put on.
Okay, but when you mean current date, when you say current date, do you mean the date of purchase, or is it today?
Well, actually, in our case, it doesn't make any difference, to be honest. And I now realize that the function, the calculate estimate, on the first time, it simply gives you the date since the it gives you just a number when you have less than 2 buys. Let me show you what I mean, because I was looking the function the other time.
So should I stop the share? Stop sharing, yeah?
Before you stop, Sana, I just had a question about the function get days between dates. If you could we get the definition of that one. So the utility function get days between dates, if you could show me that. Yeah, excellent. I was just wondering, because last time we did talk about the date FNS library that we already had installed for the last ticket. So we already had this library. Did you look into this library if maybe it already has this kind of a utility function? If you know what I mean. Like we mentioned that date FNS is a very standard library for anything to do with dates. And I was just wondering if you had a chance to look into it, because it has a function specifically that calculates the difference between days. So you didn't have to do it manually. As in, of course, it's good that you did it. It's a learning point. I was just wondering if when you were working on it together, did you check the date FNS library?
No, we didn't. So
Yeah,
created
the
it.
acceptance criteria mentioned that we should create a function like this. They just gave us the name of the function, expecting us to be the ones to create it.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's fair. That's a good point. But like we said last time, when it comes to dates, it's a tricky thing to implement accurately. So just like a note, you didn't do anything wrong, just a future note that it's always better, I think, to use a library. And DateFNS will have a lot of these kind of functions to calculate minutes between dates, hours, days, everything you want to do. But cool.
Okay.
Nice. And maybe
Thank
then,
you.
Aristos wants to-
Yeah. No, I was just taking a look at the calculate estimate function, and yeah, it's correct what you've done, because actually the second parameter that you pass is actually the day since last transaction. So yeah, it's correct. Yeah, sorry, my mistake.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I think that the demo was really nice. At least it seems like you prepared to show in real time, like updating and getting the real date. I would just like you to show me one thing, or maybe you can also just answer, because you said you changed the date from the Unix time format to the date string. So if you add an item to if you add a new item and you check it where it marks the date last purchase, does it save it as the numbers format, or it saves it as string? Because it wasn't clear if you updated how that is done, or if you just did it manually in the database.
It's rendered as a JavaScript date, and it's part of what the last week issue handled. But we only modified it to a Java. Last week, it was returned as a millisecond. I mean, the date last purchased, but we were able to change it to render a JavaScript date. Is that what you asked?
Yeah, so you updated the code to be sure that it doesn't it's saved with the date string.
I guess that's correct.
I was just curious, just to be sure that, so that when you run into bugs in when you try to do this again in the future, and you don't forget that you maybe didn't update the function and you just did it manually. So that's fine for me.
Okay.
So we can move on to the next team.
Okay, just showing my screen.
And just for the code walkthrough, it would be nice if you also don't go into detail into every detail of, like, maybe how the date function works. I think we can see it, so we don't spend too much time in the demo, and we can move to the next part.
Okay, I can demo the functionality really quickly. So we are on the add item view. So the functionality that we added ensures that if the user tries to submit an item with no item name, they get an error message. So they're told to please add the item's name. But in addition to that, if they try to add something that's already on the list, so I know that Moose is already on the list, it ought to give them an error message. So Moose, I think, is on the list, maybe in lowercase. So hopefully if I try and add it all in uppercase, the error message works. It should also work if I add in a little bit of white space. So it should pick that up. And again, tell the user that they've already got that item. And finally, if I add in any punctuation, it again should pick up the fact that the item's already on the list. So that's what we implemented, and I'll stop sharing and hand over to Mike to explain.
Before you stop sharing, Karen,
Yeah.
looks really good. Just one thing I noticed, like when you have the error thing showing, the rest of the app kind of moves down. I think it would be nice if, you know, like this state would already account for that error space, so that when the so can you maybe just trigger the error?
Yeah.
So now you see there was like a little jump down. I think it would be nice for the UI to be consistent if already now you accounted for that error space, so that when the
Okay.
error happens, there's no like you know, like a little jump down.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is like
Change.
now it's not a big thing because the app is small, but when you have like a whole page shift, it's not as smooth. But yeah, otherwise, really good job. And just the other bit is if that kind could be also uppercase or
Yeah. Yes, definitely. I will change that.
thank you. Otherwise,
Okay.
yeah, really good.
Over to you, Mike.
All right. Please, can you let me know if you can see my screen yet?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay, so all right, thank you, Eva, for that feedback. I think it's something I weren't paying attention to. The other content of the page jumping. I mean. All right, so for the function, the way we implemented this, I think this is where we did that word. So for the first one that checks if the input field is empty and the user tries to submit, I think we're checking it here. But basically checking if the item data dot item name is equal to an empty string. Just what we have here basically. And then we're throwing an error using the set error I created previously. And for the other ones, to check for the other criteria, that's to check if the item already has been added to the list, or if the item has any punctuations or so we did a filter, filtering the data, changing everything to a lowercase using the replace method. Then within the replace, we defined a regular expression. So basically, this regular expression explains that. So this negates everything that is either a letter, a digit, or I think a white space. No, not a white. Yeah, a white space. I think. So it negates. So W negates everything that is a digit, a letter, or a white space, and then this also is a space. So basically anything that is not a digit or a letter or a white space is negated by this function. This G represents a global search through the string basically, and we're replacing it with an empty string. Then we're splitting it by any space we put into the word while we're typing it, and then we're joining it back, and we're using the include methods to look at the item data, the item name, and we're also converting it to lowercase using the place method the same way we wrote it above, and the other methods also. And so that is how we wrote it. We wrote the function to work.
At all?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
we can. Thank you for the demo. And I think that was also a very nice demo. And it works pretty nice. One comment from me would just be for the code part. I see it's just a minor comment, just something to take note. I see you have where you are removing doing the regex, you did it twice, and I was in my opinion, something like that maybe you have a function for that so that you don't have to duplicate effort, or maybe if you change how you are doing the regex for the item name, probably you will likely forget to do that for the other one. And then in that case, there's no consistency. The other one, I'm a bit confused why you would need to do the same regex on the item name that's already in the database, because I would assume maybe at this point it should already be filtered before saving to the database. So then you don't have to do that for it again. So just my curiosity if that would not be possible.
Yeah, let me just, maybe I can just delete it and see if it still works fine.
No, I'm not saying it would not work. What I'm saying is the regex does the same thing twice, and it's something that could be in its own, could be done. You have like a function to do that conversion and give you the data. You don't need to do it now. You can check on it later, and probably in the task for the next week, you would have enough time to do that. Yeah, so that's just it from me. Any comment from Eva?
Yeah, I just had a question about the split and join. Was that just to remove empty spaces?
Yes, just to remove empty spaces between
If that's the case, you could there's another string function called trim. So just trim that removes all empty spaces. So you could use that.
Yeah, the trim, if you decide to use trim, trim removes from the beginning and the end, but then there's a white space in between typing the letters. Trim may not be able to find that. I think we tried trim. I tried using trim to work on it, but it was only trimming from the end and the beginning. But then say you're typing a letter, say you're typing something like bread or something. Let me just share my whole screen quickly and share the code.
So does your search support like two-word search, or is it all single?
Not all single. It supports two-word search too. So say we already have bread on the list now. Yeah. So say, where's this coming? Okay. Say we come here and we type, maybe we give a space between that and try to submit this. Trim would not find this, or trim did not find this. Trim is only trimming from here and the beginning. So, but the way we used for the method we used, it's catching something like this, and then it makes sure tell us that this item is already in the list.
I see. So this is I think it's an age-old question between allowing users to type whatever they want, because sometimes users want to, for example, there's a issue with forms sometimes with surnames, because some people have surnames with only 2 letters, and then some developers said, oh no, surname has to be at least 3 letters or more, and then people that have 2-letter surnames can't input them. So I think when you deal with inputting data and users inputting data, there's a fine line between cleaning up their input, which is, we try our best, but then trying not to do too much, because sometimes maybe there will be words that are, one word is one thing, but if you add a space, it's 2 valid words, but it's a different word. So I'm not sure in this case, if trimming for sure, but I'm not sure if I would go for removing all the spaces, because we should allow the users to make a typo and then delete it instead. But maybe that's like just a consideration for the future. Uh,
Yeah.
And what about things like ice cream?
Yes, an ice cream, you should be able to add ice cream. But let me see if we can search for it.
That's
So
a good point. Yeah, if you add,
so let me see. Ice cream. Okay, it says, well, what if I do ice? I don't think anybody would type ice cream together. I'm not sure, but yes, it catches this too.
yeah. So
Yes, but I
just
think like is put another way, what Eva is saying. What I think basically done here is you build the validation that only checks for one word. So everything is just one word. If assuming you use the same regex to trim the inputs before saving, then this ice cream will just be one word when you are saving it. And I think using just trim to trim the beginning and the end is fine, because if you start trying to do between words, probably I could decide to add the shopping item that is based on abbreviation, and then if you trim all that, you remove, it loses meaning for me. So just going with Eva out there, that I think just the trim function to trim the beginning and the end is fine.
Yeah, but so the way it is now, the way it is written, so the user can basically add any type of any name of an item they want to add. So it does not stop you from adding a name that has abbreviation and all of that. It just searches when you're trying to add that same item again with all those abbreviations. I think that is when it catches it and says that that item is already on the list. So it doesn't limit you from adding any type of word you want to add to the list.
Yeah, so my point is, if, like I suggested earlier, that you could decide to do the trimming or clearing out the input before saving, so that you don't have to do the same regex twice like you are currently doing. If you decide to use the same function to do those trimming before saving, you would realize that all you are saving in is just one word. It works with the validation, but if you were going to use that same one to clean the input before saving, then you will realize that it's just one word you are saving. It removes every sort of meaning that I would have. And I would also think that just trim in this case, to trim both the beginning and the end is fine. And also, like I see you are doing dot includes. I think if those data are just I guess you are searching for the whole word, and if you trim or use the same regex, you just need to check if a string is equal the other string, and this includes would have to do, if you have a lot of data, it will be, or like it has to go through each and every item in the string prop, and just doing a regular equal would be more optimal. This is just me talking to going a bit further in terms of something that might be more optimal for you to consider in your future work, not for this code, and things could be much simpler. But does that make sense?
Yes, I think it does. Thank you.
Oh, then that's it for the demo, or does Sandra or Cassandra have any question for the team?
Oh, no, from me. Thank you. It's clear.
Then we can move on to the learning module. Over to you, Eva.
Okay. There we go. So can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Excellent.
Well, I can.
Well, Sandra can, it's good enough for me. One audience is enough. So yeah, today we'll talk about communication for devs, which you will notice is when you work in team, when you work in a remote team, it's a very, very important skill. And especially, I feel like a lot of developers that are technically very skilled sometimes do not put enough time to learn how to communicate effectively, and sooner or later it gets difficult at work. For example, we have a senior developer at work just now that is now kind of been warned that he needs to improve before he can be promoted to like the next level. Even though he's technically very, very good, he needs to become a better communicator specifically. So we'll talk a little bit about that, because like I said, working in a team, yes, you solve tickets, you write code, but a lot of time it's communicating with your team members, with your manager, with designers, cross teams, giving feedback, accepting feedback, communicating your ideas. It's all communication. Specifically, today we'll talk about 3 ways of communicating, or like 3 important areas of communication. One is documentation. And documentation is everything. Everything that we write and do. For me, I consider everything part of documentation. How we name our branches, how we name our PRs, how we name our functions. Everything can be documentation. But yeah, specifically, as we write documentation, we kind of want to answer these questions. So what did I do again? So then if you think about you writing a project or a PR, maybe you want to write a README to help others run the same project. You want to, so number 2, write things down that help you learn. It's a great tool for revisiting big decisions. So when you work in a team, you might encounter something like, what are they called? RFCs, requests, RFCs? No, I forgot what it is. Request for comments. So in our team is whenever we have a big technical decision that we want to make, we need to write a proposal. So that's also kind of a documentation. So why is this a good idea? What are the benefits? What are we avoiding? What technical debt are we addressing? All those things. Number 4, documentation or lack thereof is so evident when we onboard new team members. It has happened to me before that I would join a team and it would be great. Like I would know exactly what to do, how to run the project, if something didn't work, where to go for help, who to ask. Perfect. In other teams, you start your first day and it's one frustrating experience after the other. Like things that are obvious to team members are totally like, to new people, it's like, what does that even mean? So yeah, make sure if you're ever gonna be, as in when you start a new team, that you give feedback. I find that very important. Whenever someone joins or when I join the team, I always give, as a new person, feedback as to how hard or how easy or how clear the documentation was for me to like start working on the project. Number 5, avoid institutional knowledge. So we want to avoid people having like hoarding knowledge and then they go on holidays or they are sick and then like things just collapse because like they're the only one that has the password or they're the only ones that know how this works. Like that is dangerous. And it's also not good for the person, right, that has this knowledge, because then it means that they can be on holidays and someone is like messaging them like, hey, how do you do this exactly? So we really want to avoid this. And my manager, my current manager right now, he said like, if you want to be irreplaceable, you have to make yourself replaceable. Like share everything you know, write down everything you've learned. And by that, you will become irreplaceable because people will know that you are the right kind of person, like that teaches, that shares with the growth mindset. So that's, I think, the right attitude. And then, yeah, lastly, empowers all team members again, because maybe it took you a week to learn something, but you can write this down, and someone else can learn this in an hour. And yeah, it's just great. So yeah. So how do we write documentation? it's a science. There's jobs now about like technical writers. There's people whose job is to write this, because it's a very delicate balance between being specific, precise, but informative, but also fun and approachable and accessible. So I do think like writing for the person who knows the least is a good approach. So I don't know, you have a project, and even if you've done it 100 times, it's still nice to say, hey, you will need Node for this. When you first clone the project, npm install, like just to cover the basic steps. Because even though it's super obvious to you, it might not be obvious to like other people that have just joined, and you might have just saved them a couple of hours of frustration. Optimize for the person who needs a quick reference. Okay, and there's a documentation example. I think we can click on this, but doesn't work. So I will send you, maybe each of us could send you a couple of examples of documentation. I quite like the Next.js. If you my Greek keyboard, Next.js. By Vercel, who's like the hot thing right now. I quite like their documentation. If you have yourself, because you're all learners, if you have a good example of documentation, please also feel free to share. But yeah, it's like I said, it's an art. Pull requests, we've talked about this before, and how we've all noticed that you've gotten better and better at it from week one. Because like we say, by writing clear, concise, with instructions to how to test, you are saving others time, you're saving others focus and energy. Because like if someone says, okay, can you review this? And I go there, there's like, I don't know, it just says 20 files changed, 800 lines added, 1,000 removed. I'm going to be like, oh my God, I don't have time for this. But if someone says, okay, yes, I changed all these files, but it's just naming changes, and I've added these libraries, I've updated this. So actually, you just need to go to this file and test this. It will take you 10 minutes, and just, yeah, give them specific instructions. It will make it also faster for people to jump on your reviews, your PRs, and review them. Because depending on where you work, you will be like required to have people like sign off before you can merge. So it's like kind of helps you to like just speed your process as well. And like we said, a big part of interviewing is walking through code. Yeah, having a robust PR description helps you remember what you did, for sure. It has happened to me before that I would go back to my closed pull request and like, like look for the notes there. So yeah, I think it's, again, you don't want to be too like dry and too much, but like finding the right balance of just like go. So I normally use like emojis and bullet points and say like the important bits, the small bits, and like ideas or something. Like I try to make it interesting and like with predictable format. So my PRs are always the same kind of structure, so people can really understand them quickly. Yeah, so screenshots, GIFs, videos, again, make it interesting for other people. Link to resources and permalinks to code you reference. For sure, number 3, so important, self-review before asking others to review your code. Because if you finish your code, it works, so you're like pushing it to GitHub and you're asking people to review, and then they're like, okay, there's this typo, there's this, it crashed on it errored out on the first time I ran it. If these things happen, like people will start thinking that you're wasting their time a little bit. This could happen. I have a colleague at work that does that. Like he just wants to like push stuff out the door, and then he's like, okay, please review, and you go, and it's just like, oh my God, like, did you run this? This is like the basic stuff is not there. Oh yeah, so I would really encourage you to self-review. And yeah, keep PR small and narrowly scoped. It's, again, you might be tempted, like as you're working on the code, you're like, okay, I should also refactor this, and this function should have a better name, but like really try to scope work into like just the relevant bits. So like if you notice a bug, file that as a different bug and go to it after you finish this work. If you want to like refactor something else, again, file a different ticket and go to the refactor after, because it's better to have smaller PRs, because then there's less opportunities for mistakes. People will review them faster. You will get them merged faster. So it's just much better to keep your PRs, narrowly scoped. I think as for great PR descriptions, I've seen yours. I think many of them were really good. So I think stuff that we just talked about now, and like if you continue doing I really like the instructions for demoing, saying what you've changed, maybe even you can say what you've learned, or like, I've added this library because this and that. So that I think is we're getting there.
Sorry, Eva, please is that link clickable?
Oh yeah,
Or
let me
the
see.
great one.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's so yeah, so we have like nice headings, description, display items. I think it's this very typical format, I would say. Again, I'm the type of person that would add emojis here, or just something, because this is again quite a lot of text to go through. But depending on what kind of a person you are, and what you will see also for yourselves what works best. People also adapt templates so that you can add it to like your GitHub. There's a templating file, and then like your PRs will always be the same. It's as long as you say what is happening, what's changed, and your PRs are well scoped, you will be in a good place. But like I said, like, because we are also already giving you like tickets, so your PRs are naturally scoped, that has not been an issue. But I see in real life that is one of the biggest issues that people have, that is just like, okay, I'm here, I might as well change this and this and this and that, and suddenly your PR is just very big and no one wants to review it. Comments. So I think you've all had like a good example, because the code that you are looking at is already really well commented, I think. And I've seen you add comments. So this is more just like a review. It gives your team more context while they're actively tracing through code that you implemented. And code can in some ways be self-documenting, but the decisions behind the code are not always self-apparent. So for me, I normally write comments, especially like if there's something weird, like, because I try to name my functions well, I try to name my files, like everything should be clear, but sometimes it's like, okay, there's some weird code that I wrote, but like there's this bug in this library linked to this bug, just explaining like why you have done this. That's for me, it's always add comments in that case. And then like number two is like when there's like really complex code, because sometimes we try to make functions small and readable, but sometimes it's unavoidable. And then instead of giving people like 50 lines of like really complex stuff, it's nice to break it down and explain like step by step. Okay, I'm getting this, I'm parsing this data, I'm changing into this, I'm expecting this. So it's an art of what's too much, what's too little. I would say in general, people comment too little. Because again, like when you're writing, it's very obvious to you and you're like, yeah, sure. But I would really encourage you, to keep commenting, like just think of yourself in a couple months looking at the same code. Like when you still remember all the decisions that you've made, like why did you do this? Like why have you named it like this? Like what exactly does this function do? It can save you like minutes and minutes, and which can then accrue to like hours at some point. So yeah, comment what to write. So focus on the why rather than the what. So like explaining why this function takes these two parameters and like what it, but not as much like saying this takes, because if you say this function takes number and number, you shouldn't, like that's already obvious from the parameters names. So sometimes we don't have to explain what, but saying like why. I was curious, so I did click on this code, and for just a library. And it's, yeah, again, nicely formatted, because we also don't want the comments to be like super long. Like some people write comments in a really long line. I did something wrong. And it's hard to read, but yeah, like nice formatting, nice spacing. Because again, like this function is a little bit longer. So you're just saying, okay, this, you explain as you go along. It can be like whole sentences, it can be like some abbreviations, it's up to you. Yeah, so this one has lots. So normally when you have, so this is like the documentation for the components. So you like would write more about the parameters you're taking in, what the default values are, things like that. But this is more like a library code. So like here you want to be like really explicit. But yeah, again, I think it's a good way to, as you encounter code, as you read other people's code, is good to like think about that as well. And if you find good examples, feel free to share them also like in Slack, or like what you like, what you didn't like, what was clear, what wasn't clear. Because this is, like we said, crafting, writing code is one bit, but then the very important other bit is reading other people's code and your code, and like commenting is a big part of that, I think. Yeah, and then this is like just a more of a open-ended question of what has your experience been like with documentation, PR descriptions, code comments? Like how do you see, like what has helped you? Maybe, yeah, if anyone could share their experiences with the project so far.
Yeah, if I may jump in, I think all these things add to, to the quality of the software that you deliver. And well, you will see that many times the code in JavaScript is very self-explanatory, but sometimes the comments go a long way. And definitely, I totally agree with having a concise PR that for the reviewer is, it's easy to understand what you're doing and describe what you're solving. And regarding documentation, I want to say that as a project grows and it gets bigger and bigger, it's important to documentate a technical decision that you have taken, how things work in your application, and stuff like that. So when other developers come in the project, it's easy for them to, to get started. Even how you set up the project at the beginning. For example, I remember when I started the job, like on my previous job, when I started, it took me around 3 days to set up the project and get started. So yeah, I'll finish with that.
Cool. I think, yeah, like Peter was right. We are again running out of time. So like I said, I encourage you to share your examples, questions on Slack, and then we'll move on again to the issues. I'm not sure who's doing the issues this week. Is it you?
It's me.
That's
Yes. Okay. So screen. Yeah. So okay. So I thought that since last week, the a little most difficult issue was for Sandra and for Sandra and Cassandra. Yeah, I think we could keep the teams the same this week and prevent the difficulties. How can I hide that doc? Yeah, there you go. So ticket 11, as a user, I want to be able to delete items from my shopping list so that so that my list isn't cluttered with items that I don't want to buy, or that you accidentally add an object there and you want to delete it. So yeah, the acceptance criteria, you should render a button to delete an item when it's clicked. So you shouldn't you shouldn't immediately delete the button rather than prompt the user with a confirmation box. So usually when you do destructive actions, you want to make the user confirm that instead of for preventing him from doing something in accident. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And if that's okay with you, I will assign that to Sandra and Cassandra, not me again.
I know, I do that every time as well.
Yeah.
I'll do it, I'll go for it.
There it is. Okay, left.
No, I think we're actually supposed to switch this week. So it's not supposed to be the same two people as previous week.
Yeah, that's what I said, because the previous week task was a little bit more difficult for Sandra and Cassandra, so I thought we could keep the same teams and revert the difficulties.
Okay.
So issue number 12, as a user, I want to list my shopping list. I want to view a list of my shopping list items in order of how soon I'm likely to need to buy each one of them, and so that it's clear that I need to buy soon. Not getting into many details, the most important thing is that the order that we need to be able to see the items is this, soon for 7 days or later, kind of soon between 7 and 30 days, not soon 30 days or more, and inactive will be for the items that have been, that 60 days have passed since the last patches. So yeah, you need to create some new UI elements for that. The most important thing is that the urgency indicator should not rely only on color because of accessibility reasons. So we also need some lexical indications about how the items are ordered. So yeah, you need to see how to order the item, how to sort the items. And then if you finish on time with this, you can also take a look at the stretch goal and see what happens with items that the date next purchase has passed but are not yet inactive. And that can be called, and these items can be called overdue. Any questions?
No, it looks interesting.
Yeah, this is really interesting. So
I can like imagine mine. We finish this call and he's like hoodie on, poof, music, lights, like he was like, I saw stretch goal, I'm going there. Yeah.
Yeah. So if there are no other questions, I think we are good to go for this week as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's
Thank
it.
you very much.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
too. It was great to
Thanks.
see you
Lovely.
again,
Oh, thanks.
and
Yeah.
have a nice week.
Have a lovely next of
All right.
the
Thank you.
evening.
Yeah,
Bye.
have a good hand, everyone. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.